Hi, everyone. Welcome to the virtual edition of Film Independent Presents. I am Brian Sheehan, Film Independent's Senior Manager of Industry Relations. First off, I just want to thank our lead sponsor, the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. They've been an ardent supporter of ours for many, many years now, and we're so thankful for their support, especially during this trying time. And we also want to thank Vision Media, who has been our official partner for the virtual screenings that hopefully you're taking part in. We have a couple coming up, and stay tuned to the Film Independent Presents page on our site for any upcoming events. I am so happy to be here today and welcoming our guest, who was Oscar nominated in 2016 for his live action short, Everything Will Be Okay, and just made his feature film debut with 7500, starring Joseph GordonLevitt as a very stressed out airplane pilot. And it premiered on Amazon Prime last week. Please welcome Patrick Vollrath.
Hello.
Hi, Patrick.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
So I would love to actually, now that I've mentioned Everything Will Be Okay, I would love to hear a little bit about kind of what the process was kind of from being nominated then to getting to 7500. Was 7500 something that you were working on during or after, or when did it come about?
Everything Will Be Okay was my final film at film school. So my thesis film. And we shot that in May 2014. And I finished it and we premiered it in 2015, January. And the first festival, a very big one in Germany. And we were very happy to show it there. And then we won there, the main award. And on the stage, one of the jury members was the guy who later became the producer on 7500. And on the stage, he gave me the award and said, "We need to talk later." And then we were at the bar and
Oh, looks like we're frozen for a second. If everyone could just hold on in the waiting room for just a little bit, we're just going to get Patrick up and running.
Hello.
Hi, Patrick.
Shit.
And there we go with the internet.
I thought it was, somehow you freezed them, and I thought it was. Then I saw that my Wi-Fi got down somehow, but I think I'm back on.
Yeah, we are all set.
Okay. What was the last sentence I said?
You were just talking about pretty much finishing that up for film school. Everything Will Be Okay, and then it kind of went frozen.
Okay. Yeah, I won the award, and on stage, the producer for 7500 was jury member of the festival that we won, and we talked later on, and I had this idea for this film just played for 7500, and I was like, okay, I have an idea, but I first want to write down a 2-pager, and we met later in May again, and I had this 2-page idea written down, and he was like, yeah, I'm very much interested in that. And I had a bad experience before with the producer, so I didn't just sign a contract or something. I just wanted to see if they share my vision for the film, if they share the same idea. And I wrote an outline for 30 pages over the next couple of months. And then I sent it to them, and parallel to that, there were we got another award for Everything Will Be Okay, and then we got to the Student Academy Awards, and it got bigger and bigger. And then, while already writing the script and signed a contract, we got this Academy Award nomination. And after that, there were a lot of people coming up to me and like, oh, you know, what's the next you want to do? What's the next project you want to do? And I already had the script, but they were like, okay, can you imagine to make that as an English language film with like an international actor? And you know, when you come just out of film school, you never would expect to get this question. Like, or like for the first film, you just hope that someone will do it, and then they ask, you know, do you want to have a bigger name on it? And it's like, you know, I'm not against it if you can get me one. So you know, that's how that started, and we took like all this vibe we got from the Academy Award nomination, and yeah, we started from there. I got a help, you know, I got a manager after that, and they helped me to put that film together with Joseph, and we financed it from Austria, and it helped, of course, from Austria and Germany, and it helped, of course, just like the award nomination, to get like open doors and to get agents like just listen to you. Like first-time filmmakers always, I think, pretty hard. But if you have something like, you know, like this nomination that really helped, that people listen and like, okay, that's interesting.
And speaking of Everything Will Be Okay, if the audience hasn't seen it, is there a way for people to find that right now? Is it on any platform?
It's on YouTube. It's on YouTube. You can just, Everything Will Be Okay. Right, it's a short film, 30 minutes. It's, I don't know, just everything, you know, there will be a lot of links to Everything Will Be Okay, because there's a lot of songs and stuff. But I think you will find the 30-minute version.
Yeah, to the audience, if you have not had a chance to check it out, please do after this Q&A. And speaking of Everything Will Be Okay, without revealing too much what happens in Everything Will Be Okay to the audience, there's, in both that short and now 7500, there's a focus on the tension building throughout. And I wonder what was kind of your process of kind of like maybe connecting those two? Was an idea that you wanted to kind of continue from the short to this, and really focusing on maintaining that sense of tension?
Well, you know, during film school, I experimented with a lot of like narratives. Like I did experimental films, and I did more very classical short films. But in the end, we winded up to, first, me and my cameraman, we were in the same class, and we studied together for like a couple of years, and we developed over the years this kind of style, this improvisational style, and also like in the art or in the form of storytelling, like not just, you know, telling a drama, but try to build it as a thriller. Try to write it as a thriller, so that there is this combination from this, the drama elements built or like put together with the thriller elements, so that the audience follows because of the thriller somehow, and winds up to get it, you know, or we tell a drama in the end, or in its core, and you know, and that was basically what I wanted to, you know. I knew that some, you know, in a hijacking film about a hijacking is not just a drama. There's like action and thriller elements, of course, in it, but in its core, I wanted to keep it as a drama, but still tell it with the film language of thrillers. Yeah, so this is something that we all, you know, that was there from the start. And if you watch Everything Will Be Okay, you see there's a very last scene is also just placed just in one room, and you know, I tried always there when people told me like, okay, I want to, you know, the last scene, I want to do like a whole movie just in one room. That was always always the way I pitched it to people, so they could imagine what kind of intensity, because there's also people knocking on the door, what we maybe could, if we could do a film that is as well, like an intense film as it. Everybody told me that the last scene was for Everything Will Be Okay.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask about the banging on the door. Just adds so much to the proceedings. And so was there like a designated crew member that was doing the banging, or were the actors actually doing it? Or
yeah, I always wanted for Joseph and the actors outside of the door to play at the same time, even if you just see it through the security camera. I wanted them to bang on the door while Joe can hear what they are doing outside. If they can hear if it's if they stop for a moment, or if they're getting really aggressive outside. And it's a very, very strong door. Every pilot knows that this door, you can shoot at it and it doesn't matter, because it has this kind of material that is very, very safe for everyone. But still, there's a lot of pressure, of course, coming from someone really wanted to get in and be just like a few meters away from you. So that was something that I really, while shooting it, it was not that easy to because we bought this original plane, but we still had, we had it on a platform and stuff, and it was not as stable as it is when it's in a real airplane. So we had to, and the door would be like the sound would be so loud that it would be very terrible for the sound guys. So in the end, we had to build like the door even bigger and bigger, and make it like that the sound doesn't destroy like every dialogue and stuff. But the banging we hear, it's like actually banging. That's a bang we came up during the shooting.
And so someone had some pretty raw knuckles after that.
Yeah, the actor. There was one actor who really, they really hurt their hands. They're like, cuts here, cut there, blueprints there and there. And
so you mentioned the security footage too. We love the opening, that you're not quite sure what is happening yet, but the silent security footage, as you see the hijackers getting past customs and all that. Was that always the opening, or was it something that kind of like came along? And
it came during the writing process. The first not really the first draft, but the outline was without that. It starts in the airplane, they enter the cockpit, and then I always thought like I wanted to get some impressions from outside. I wanted to get like this feeling of, you think, that's what all these security cameras do, they never prevent, or it's very hard to prevent through, but they give you still a kind of security. You feel more secure if there's a security camera, even if it doesn't matter if when something happens, they just can like, see what happened after it happened. And I want to give this feeling of false security at the beginning, because everybody's talking about we need more security here and security there, but in the end it doesn't change. When you want to prevent something like that, you have to start like way, not there. You have to stay way early, like very, 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 very earlier than building a security camera. And this kind of irony I wanted to talk, like give an impression about. And the stuff you see in the end, like this freeze frame, because I always wanted to start like that would be the freeze frame we see later in the news, like later in the newspapers will be, I think, that freeze frame about like, okay, that is the guys who did that, or that is one of the guys who did that. And I wanted to start like the whole story from this picture we all know from the media, and like over the course of the film, breaking this picture, especially for this guy, seeing like the mask, the faces behind the desperation, the mistakes and the misguidance, and the naivety, you say that? How naive he is and everything, like over the course of the film. I want to get to know from that moment closer and closer to him until the end.
And so before that, while you were writing the script, did you do a lot of research into hijackings and
Yeah, I did. I did a lot of research into, I watched every hijacking film and airplane film, of course. I read about every hijacking that happened since aviation started, and I also did a lot of research, of course, of the technical stuff, how airplanes work and how the procedures are, and I did a lot of research on. Especially these kind of young kids who are winding up, or like, there's a lot of, I don't know if in the USA it was the same, but in Austria and Vienna or in Germany, there were like a lot of young kids, like 16, 17, 18, during 2015, 2016, they left their home, this safe, secure home in Germany, and joined like a terrorist group. And there are a lot of stories about people who winding up and calling their parents like, oh, this was the worst mistake, please get me out of here. And it's kind of very, very hard to get people out of there, of course. And it's a very long journey. And, I watched, I talked to people who met these people. It's very hard to get very close. But I talked to a lot of people who worked with them, who get close to them. And, I did a lot of research about these kids, why they do that. How are they when they come home after that journey, or like this kind of adventure they took, and this was a research process we went through over the whole part of writing. Like every day we also did a research.
And you said you mentioned watching a lot of, there's kind of a whole genre of hijacking films. Were there any ones in specific that were really key to your inspiration? Any ones that you would highly recommend to the audience?
I think you can see from the film that Paul Greengrass's style and Paul Greengrass's films are very much an inspiration to the way I made this film. And of course, in 1993, since I first saw it, I was always fascinated by. It was not that I like watched that film and say, oh, I want to make a hijacking film. It was the idea came like on a different way to me. And when I started thinking about that, I immediately thought, of course, back to 1993 and Paul Greengrass's film. And I think who hasn't seen that film, it's very highly recommended about not just about hijacking, about the, in what film can do, like in form of intensity, and how you can be left behind speechless after a film.
And you also mentioned like kind of really, really wanting to explore in a feature film, like the one location. So in this instance, in the cockpit, and the very like claustrophobic nature of it. And you were kind of in the process of this way before, the coronavirus lockdown. And, now there's kind of so much discussion about the future of films, and are they going to be a little more, intimate, a little more, claustrophobic to like reduce the number of actors and the number of sets and things like that. So do you want to kind of go beyond that now and go to like kind of, more open sets, or is that something you want to continue to explore? Is that like very intimate nature?
It was never like I had the idea about making a film just in one place. But at the same time, I had the idea about like this young character, and the same time talking about like kind of a circle of violence during a film, and breaking the circle of violence in a film. It all came together, and all these ideas in my head came together, and I started writing this. And I hope for all of us that we don't reduce the number of actors, and we don't reduce the number of sets in films, because we can travel, like when we go to the movies, right? We can travel like everywhere in the world and in the universe, and that's that what's make filmmaking or like watching films so amazing, that you are beyond. You know, you can see the world from a different angle, and so I hope that this doesn't change. I don't think that it will change anything in the long run. Maybe like in the next period or in the next year somehow, but not in the long run. And from, you know, I'm from Austria, or I'm living in Austria here, and we can go to the movies, and it was really the first thing on the day the movie theaters opened again. I went there and I watched the film, and it was really, really nice to be back in the theater. Even if I didn't like the film I watched, it was just like the feeling to be back in there was like very good. So, and of course, like this film we made fits a little bit too. On one hand side, I think it fits because we're all locked in. But on the other hand side, you know, it's like I want to go out. You know, I don't want to. It's a different, you know, like. On the other hand side, I would like not to just watch something when I'm locked in about someone who's locked in. I want to see the world.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people who don't want to quite fly just yet, but even this is still sort of an escape to like just be thinking about getting on a plane, despite the circumstances. And so talk about your actors for a little bit. How did Joseph come on board the project? And I mean, he's talked a lot about how intense this was and what a challenge it was. So if you could also talk a little bit about your directing relationship with him and you know, kind of working with him in such a really, you know, intense way at every scene.
It was, you know, Joe came on board. We sent him the script through his agent, and we didn't really, you know, it was more like a wild shot, like, okay, Joseph would be amazing. He fits totally, first acting wise, from his talent, of course, but I really wanted to have someone who is can play a very ordinary guy, like this kind of Tom Hanks kind of person who's like your next door neighbor, and you don't expect him to, you know, to be the CIA agent who, you know, who solves the whole situation. I want to have someone who's like very, very, you know, who's a very ordinary somehow. And Joe can play that, even if he's a, you know, he's in the movies for like 30 years now. He has this quality, this everyday man quality. And that's very special, I think, for an actor. And then, you know, we sent him the script and we got a response like, okay, he's interested in it and he wanted to talk to me. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. And then we booked a flight. So because it's always, I had that before, it's always hard to pitch your vision of a film through what we are doing right now. It's better to sit in a room, talk to another, look into his eyes, and, you know, he can feel the energy maybe or something. That's very hard through like a webcam. So, and we met there. He invited me to his house, and we talked there for like 3 hours around. And I pitched him like, you know, we talked about the script and what he was thinking about his character, about things he saw. He saw in that character or in that story, and then we talked a lot about like the style of directing, like this improvisational style. That, you know, I shot Everything Will Be Okay just based on an outline, and we improvised a lot of not scenes because that were written out kind of, but the dialogues and the intensity, and, you know, very open. Like every actor can bring something to the scene. They can try out. I watch it and say like, this is not the right direction. This is not how I see it. Or that's great. I didn't thought of that. And there's a lot of moments I wouldn't have thought of in writing. And they had a total freedom to, in front of the camera, to do whatever they want in the boundaries of the scene. Like there's a begin, a middle, and the end of every scene, and we have to hit all these marks somehow. But how they achieved that and how they did come there, that was never like really written down. wrote a script for like all this financing and funding kind of process, but on the first page there was like every dialogue is just a suggestion to the actor. And Joseph never kind of did that. He never like did movies, you know, he did a lot of movies where he had to hit the mark because the light was perfect there, and all this kind of traditional kind of Hollywood filmmaking. And he was like, I think, where we were very lucky that he wanted to try out new things, things he never did before. He never did a film like where he improvised his own dialogues. And you know, and I pitched them that we work this way, that the cameraman is like looking for the picture during shooting, that we don't rehearse, that we just go in there and do that we try to create it as realistic as possible. That's why like the people outside playing, it's not just playing reactions. He really reacts to what's going on. And we shot like, and you know, we shot like 20 pages of script like in one take somehow, like, because it's a film that is very in real time, and you can do that in that way. And we try to shoot as long parts of the film in one take, so the actor got very exhausted over the course, and they have to play like, and they can build up their own like their own tension over the course of the film, and they can really drop into the character. And he really liked that. I think so. He really enjoyed that, and because he really could, you know, try out things, or he really could like dive into that very deeply.
It's almost a little more like a theater acting experience, you know. So
yeah.
Like, do you come from the theater?
You know, no, not really. You know, I played in school, but that doesn't count.
We won't dig up those videos. And Omi too, who plays one of the hijackers, is an incredible find. How did he come into the project? And it's, you know, it's such a complicated character for the audience to experience and eventually empathize with. So what was the process of finding him and getting him into the project?
I knew that for that character it would be a very long casting process, and it turned out to be one. And we cast for, I think, half a year. We did street casting, we did through agencies, we did, and you know, we casted over, I would say, between 200 and 300 kids in that age there. But I looked for someone who's around 18, maybe 17, maybe 20, like in that age range, to really have someone who's very young, who can be very light, very easily misguided somehow, and you know, we had like, I always try to do as much casting as possible, because I don't rehearse, and I just try to do all the rehearse in the casting process. And I always send out, especially for that character, like the most difficult scenes. Like the phone call at the end was the casting scene, and you know, and they send in like this little videos, and we did a first look through these videos. And when I saw Omi's video, I was traveling with my short. I was invited to Hong Kong, and I was sitting there, and the casting agent sent me a video, and I was sitting there in a park, and it really moved me. It was the only one, I think, in the whole casting process who really grabbed me, and you know, and I was writing back, oh, this guy is really, really good. When I'm back, we have to invite him and do a real casting, face-to-face casting. And we did that for like 2 or 3 rounds with like the most talented kids I saw. And, you know, and Omi was from the beginning someone, you know, I think if I had more experience, I would say, okay, this is the guy from the first time I saw him, you know, but I wanted to get to know him. I wanted to be like, because it changed a little bit my writing process, of course, like, because when I have someone in my mind and I could change things here, I could change things here, there, scenes and moments, we can develop or like create or hopefully create. So yeah, it was a very, very long casting process, and yeah, I really like what he did in the film.
And that cell phone scene so that was the audition piece. That's, I mean, incredible.
That was the audition piece, the first audition piece, but later on we tried out a lot of more scenes. You know, the funny thing about him is like he's a very, very, it doesn't look like in the film, but he's a very, very shy person. And he was so afraid of Joseph, like in the beginning, because like, oh my God, like this is a guy from Batman, you know, and from Inception and this guy. And it, you know, it was very important. I talked to Joe about that he's so afraid to meet him and stuff. So we sat down, Joseph, me, and Omid, to a dinner, you know, just to be normal, having normal conversation, not talk about the film, just getting to know each other. And that was very, very helpful for him, just to be relaxed on set, you know, and not having this pressure to play with Joseph. And in the end, you know, it was so much funny scene where he screamed at him, and you know, like, what the fuck. There was, you know, this development from the guy who sits there at the dinner table waiting for Joseph to arrive and like very, very nervous, to the guy who's in the end screaming at him and sit down, and you know, that was a good to see, you know, from the first moment. We talked, and we're still friends, and yeah, and he has this he's a very, very smart character, and he had a lot of, or he like experienced a similar case like in the film in his neighborhood. So he had a lot of emotional things he could, how you say, he could build up his emotions on. And
Island too. I mean, I don't know if some of the audience has seen Welcome to Germany, but an incredible actress. And so was she cast on early on, or was that also a casting process?
It was also, I do for every, except for Joe, I did for every single, even this very small roles, I did a casting process. It's very important for me to see if I can work with the actor, if they can work with me, if they are open to this style, we shoot, if they can like drop themselves into this kind of process of not having dialogue written down, just to like, okay, you can say something like that or something like that, but I don't really, you know, if the subtext is right, you know, it doesn't matter what you say, what you actually say, really. So I did a lot of casting, and we casted her like, I think like 3 times or something, and tried out with other people, and really the intense scenes, you know, we tried that out before, so everybody knows what kind of film, or like in what kind of direction this film will, or like how the shooting process will take place, because it's, for a lot of people, it's a little bit different to do it in this free way we did it.
And you touched on it earlier, but you know, really where this film comes together is the you know, in a different way from a lot of hijacking films, is looking at that cycle of violence. And you know, there's so many moments between Joseph and Omid where you can see that they're you know, they're kind of choosing their better selves, to like Joseph having, you know, access to a weapon and not using it. So was that always kind of the main point for you, is to explore, you know, what that means, you know, what we owe each other as humans, and the empathy factor?
You know, it was, it came during the writing process. It was like, I started very much more on a technical and like this character side. And when I wrote the script, and in the end, it was more like, you know, after Bataclan happened in Paris and Charlie Hebdo attacks happened in Paris, and in Germany there was this Christmas market incident that we were thinking a lot about, should we make a film about a terrorist attack? And we were talking a lot about like, what is the core of the film, of course, and why do we do that? Why is it worth making this film? And in the end, what's already was in the film, we tried to bring out a little bit more, to tell a little bit more without like, this is especially for I don't know, but in film school, I studied with Michael Haneke, and you always learn to not be that, how you say, like, I don't find the English word, to be that obvious with the message like to hide it a little bit more and to not show it like super directly. And that's what we're trying to do, not to show it like super obvious, but like hide it beneath this character development and beneath the core moments somehow.
Well, that's very, very effective without being too messaging.
Yeah. That's what it's always like there's a small line between telling too much and telling too less, and I'm still thinking because of I read reviews, and there are some people who didn't really get that moment or like really where this film is going to. So I think about, maybe, it's a very small, thin line between overstating something and understating something. And it's a very interesting process, learning process, how people react to that and who really sees that and who really doesn't really, see it.
And sometimes you just have to say to each his own.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a couple of questions from the audience who have been typing in before we wrap up. Matt asks, can you talk a little bit about the use of sound in the film? How did you design what the plane would sound like? And how did you manipulate that to build tension? We kind of already talked about the knocks, but there's so much else that happens with the soundscape in the film.
Very good questions. Before we shot the film, me and my cameraman had the opportunity to fly in a real plane in the cockpit with, on a real normal commercial airplane. And we recorded that with our camera, and that was in the end the base on what we built parts of the film on, on the sound level. And this film has no music, as you may have noticed. And I talked to the sound designer that I want to still, what music always does is like intensifies moment or like manipulates moment or tells the audience what to feel. I don't want to tell anybody what to feel, but I still want to use the sound to manipulate, of course, the intensity. So we tried to first, based on like how every moment of flying really sounds like, and you can watch a lot of videos on YouTube, how airplanes sound like. And I was in an airplane and I heard it. And based on all that, the sound designer tried to build in the moments where a lot of things happening with the sound designer, with the engine sounds or with the knocking sounds, try to build tension, what would normally maybe come from a music where like the music is rising or like music is cut out to have this moment more more alone. And we tried to do that through the sound design. And it was a long sound design process because, and not just the sound design, also the sound editing process, because of course, we had to tell a totally different or a story outside of the cockpit with just the sound, with the knocking. If there's like 20 seconds of like pause, why is there a pause of 20 seconds not knocking? And we had to build up like, okay, they're searching for something, So there's a lot of it was a lot. I spent a lot of time with the sound editor and with the sound designer on getting this arc outside, like the arc of Vedat outside and the arc of what's happening outside, like really right. And and sometimes it's like there are a lot of people like, or we talked a lot of in the editing process about, come on, this is too much knocking right now. I cannot focus on that, and that's of course something that you really have to find the moments or the where you really wanted to build the tension and where you want to focus on the characters, and that's all kind of through sound. And I want to have a very realistic sound design, and we have an airplane aviation advisor also coming to the sound design sessions and said, oh, this sound this airplane wouldn't do, and that sounds really realistic, that's good, that's a good sound, but we need more this sound here. That played in there. We didn't when it doesn't fit for the narrative, I would change it a little bit, but it was very important to me that to have like a very realistic sound setting and manipulate it a little bit in the moments where we need it.
And during that post process, was that all happening in person? Did any of it happen during the lockdown? So were you doing some like virtual work with them, or was it mostly?
Oh, no, that was before. That was everything before the lockdown. That was, of course they weren't in Vienna and they were in Berlin, but I flew over, or I drove over there, and we talked everything in person, mostly.
And so next we have a question from Leslie, and she asks, and we talked a little bit about this, was it challenging to not replicate other film styles? So for example, you brought up Greengrass. Was there ever a moment that you were, like, am I going too much in his style? Am I, developing my own? What was that process like of kind of having the inspiration but divesting it from your own creativity?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because you never, I never try to think a lot about like, is this something like he would do, or is it based on that idea, or like this style, or like this film? It was, I watched a lot of that films, and I watched it mostly of like the technical challenges, like how does it look, how do you feel like that this plane is really flying, and what makes a difference, like how do you play with the outside, because it's of course green screen and this kind of style. And as if, in the first, as my first feature, I wasn't so much of like, if trying to create something entirely new, or like being my own, I'm still happy I could make my first feature, and I think I still, I tried not to be that, how you say, like, to be that aware that, okay, this is the kind of style maybe Paul Greengrass would do it, or something like that. It's like, I got inspired by that person. I got inspired by how Clint Eastwood shot Sully, and I got inspired by Flight and this kind of stuff. So I tried not to think a lot about that. I wanted to tell my own thing, but I knew that I wouldn't develop it or see it from a totally different angle. And I was more focused on like Joseph's journey and Vedat's journey, and less about like hijacking movies.
And so this was obviously, like you mentioned, your feature film debut. Is there anything else in the works? What's next for you in terms of projects?
Yeah, we are in the writing process of a new project. We cannot talk about it because it's not published yet, but hopefully soon. But it's a very great experience to bring out the film on a platform like that. Of course, when we get the offer by Amazon, of course we talked about like, do we want to have it as a film in the movie theaters, or like in a streaming on a streaming platform, and we discussed that a lot. And in the end, we decided like that the opportunities that so many people can see it now is a very great opportunity. Even if I, of course, always thought about this film as something for the theaters. And we had a premiere, and we had a theater release in Germany and Austria, so that's very great. And it's very great that everybody is able to see this film now.
Yeah, so I was going to ask that too. So there has been some theater activity, because I know you mentioned
in Austria and Germany. Yes, that's based on the contract we had with the funding. It must be released in the cinema, and the rest of the world is sold the rights to Amazon.
I mean, we've had this discussion with a couple of filmmakers in our Q&As, but you mentioned it too, just having that wider access to an audience through a platform like Amazon. Have you gotten any feedback from the audience that you didn't quite expect, just because it's reaching a much wider audience than it would necessarily, just in theaters?
I don't, it's of course reviews coming from Brazil, and I talked to journalists from South America and from Asia and from America and from Europe and from all over the world, from Australia. And so this is of course something that's totally new to me, that this is this widespread and all around the world. That was something that I that was something new, but from the audience, you never like really, you can read reviews, like user reviews, but they're basically all written in English, so you're not really sure where they're really coming from. So I don't have like really big feedback from that side. I just see how it came along, and
Well, thank you so much for joining us, and good luck with the rest of the release. And we're excited to hear what comes next as soon as that's available information in the industry. And to our audience that's still there, do check out Everything Will Be Okay online. And if you haven't had a chance to check out the film on Amazon Prime, please do. Thank you again, Patrick. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Yes.
And we'll look forward to chatting with you again sometime, hopefully very soon.